Okay, a couple things I want to talk about before we get started too far. One of the things I talked about last month is I like to use a large sewing pin for applying my glue. And I use a quilter's pin. They're longer. They tend to have a little bit bigger ball on the end of them, so it's a little easier to see. I also, one of the reasons why I like these, you use a toothpick, you end up getting a bunch of dry glue on it, and you end up carving that glue off, and then pretty soon your toothpick's half the length it used to be. Where this, you can come through here and just run your knife along the edge of the metal pin, and it scrapes all the glue off. Another thing I talk about a lot is putting your glue on the bottom of a shot glass.
After you finish drinking out of the shot glass.
Yeah,
preferably.
It's like if anybody's ever watched the Food Network with your wife and watched Alton Brown and he says he doesn't like unitaskers, me either. This is for glue, this is for after. Alright, the reason I don't like putting glue on a little blob of paper off to the side is inevitably you'll be watching something, you'll be talking with the wife or the grandkids or whatever, and you're going to look down and now all of a sudden this is now stuck to your forearm. If you've got your glue up on a shot glass like this, the bottom of most shot glasses have a little bit of a well in it. That's a great little spot for glue to go into. It has a wide flared base, so it's very, very difficult to knock over. If you do manage to knock it over, it is now a cylinder that's on its side, so best it rolls in a circle and chances are it won't roll off your table. This is why when we race stock cars, you put the bigger tires on the right side and the smaller tires on the left. It helps it turn. Now, this is also very handy because it being glass, when you get your glue dried in here, you come up underneath it with a screwdriver, or I like to use negative tweezers, and you peel the glue right off. And it cleans your glue surface up, gets you ready for your next application. So there's where that's real handy. Another one, I talked about going to Sally Beauty Supply and getting emery boards. The reason I suggest going to Sally's or a nail salon supply house of some sort is you go to Walmart, you get emery boards. They may have one or two flavors. If you go there, they come in different coarse grits and they're labeled on them what they are. The one I've got right here in my hand is a 100 coarse grit. I've got them all the way up to like 2,000 or 3,000. I use those for polishing frets when I'm building guitars. I also use them on this for stuff too, but typically you get that high up, you're polishing, not really sanding. So we're going to use our sandpaper that I asked you guys to bring. If you've got a good coarse emery board like this, this is going to come in real handy when we start working on the bay window. Now, I need to find my kit so we can get started. All right. Now everybody has their walls we glued together last time, and hopefully their other wall, and really ultimately I hope glued together. I did not get mine done that far, unfortunately. Wife's had kind of a rough month, so but we can work on it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on the window trim. We're going to work on building windows themselves and trimming them out. That's going to be the first thing we're going to work on, and then if we have time we'll talk about working on the bay window. Now, part of what you had in your homework was to have painted a bunch of this stuff. So, if you didn't, you're going to have a hard time proceeding here. We also should have our door backs painted and the door fronts painted. So what we're going to try to do today, the main focus is going to be, I'm going to teach you how to build your doors. One of each of them, you have two. So you'll have two to build as homework. We're going to build a couple of different windows and get those put together, and then you'll have the rest of them to do as homework. But we're going to build the doors and trim them out. We're going to build the windows and trim them out. So what you have here, you should have a little sheet that says exterior doors on it, and that'll be your door framing trim and everything. That should be painted the trim color. You'll have one that says end windows. It's the little round ones. It has the window itself, it has the window frame, and it has a little, for lack of a better description, an eyebrow piece. And that's all on one little card. That should also be painted the window trim color. You have another one here that says exterior window trim. Now this one, so I can get on the camera here, you close in real tight on it. You'll note I painted the pieces that run vertically. I did not paint these sections up here because we're going to glue a secondary piece on top of it. And that secondary piece is actually down in here in amongst all this other stuff. All right, that'll give it some 3D relief. If you painted it, it's not a problem. It's just if I'm going to paint it, if I'm going to glue something over it, I don't see the point in painting it. and it'll also help the glue adhere a little better if it's raw wood to raw wood. But if you painted it, it's not a problem. We're not talking about something that's load bearing here, so we should be in good shape. You also have another one that's called freight doors that should be painted. And this is where we've had some questions about how this works, right? The freight door back has some lines engraved on it. The reason being is what we're going to do is we're going to glue it behind that. So what you end up with then is this 2-layered door with the painted trim. All right. So actually, let's start with that. I'm going to take my piece here. Now, once you painted them in the carrier, depending on how thick the paint job you did, they may not pop out real easy. Most of this stuff should pop out with just a little bit of pressure from your thumbnail or your thumb itself. If it doesn't, turn it over onto the back and give it a light score with your knife. The paint or the windows above the door can come off separate. If they do, it's not a problem. If they don't, then great, you can put them all in one shot. So what we're doing here is I'm popping these two out of the carrier sheet, and we're going to get ready to glue those down to the backer. And I'm going to go ahead and do both of mine. Just plan on doing one of yours right now since we're trying to cover a lot of ground today.
Which one are you doing?
The freight door, the wider door.
Dick.
Freight.
Dick. Get down.
Okay. Right above the doors, you're going to see a set of windows, and then above that is another set of windows. That's actually a leftover because traditionally when I do these kits, I sell the kit with parts to do the interior as well. I really enjoy doing interiors on models. It really sets them apart. I build a lot of things with the contest room in mind, and because of that, I put a lot of extra detail parts in these things. You don't necessarily have to have both sets of these things for what we're doing today, okay? You just need one of the sets. If you want to put both of them on there, that's fine. So what I have now is my door frame popped out and one set of windows. So I'm going to go through here real quick, and I'm going to try to take out these, well, it just popped off. In that case, I'll just use this one. Okie dokie. Now, what did I do with my own window glass? Grab one off of here. If you hold the window glass up to the light, you're going to see there's two round windows, two somewhat square windows. They're rectangular, but they're a little more square than the rest of them. You're going to see the rest of the regular window glass, and you're going to see down here on the bottom two little thin rectangles. The N-scale guys may have to really look. That's the window glass for that transom over the freight door. So if you want to cut one of those out, and you're going to glue it to this piece here with all the little windows in it that's right above your freight door.
Is that transom supposed to stay on the door?
It can come off. Doesn't matter.
Glued back on it, or?
We'll mount them both. Not a problem. Now, one of the things I do with these is I mount my window glass with Aleene's tacky glue. It dries clear. If you do get a little squeeze out, let it dry, and then you can come back in and you can scrape it off or cut it off, one or the other. One of the other things I like to do, most of us wear glasses, so you know those really nice cloths they give you at the optometrist to clean your lenses on your glasses? Grab one of those extra and keep it in your hobby box, and hopefully I've got one in here. If not, you can always use your t-shirt, but these are better. I use that to clean my window glass, okay? So all I do with this is I open it up, because when you cut these on the laser, the smoke from it atomizing the plastic will end up on this window glass. So I take it and I hold it and reach in and grab it on either side with this rag, and then I let go, and then I use the rag to kind of polish back and forth to wipe that off. And then here's where those negative tweezers I was talking about come in real handy, and this is one of the biggest uses I use for them. After I let go of it and I polish that piece of glass, I never want to touch it with my hands again, because you're going to leave a fingerprint on it, which is horribly out of scale and not prototypical.
And lost points in a contest round.
Oh, big time. That's one of the first things judges look for. The three big things you look for. A building that's out of square, well, 4. A building that's out of square, corners that have big gaps in them, fingerprints in glass and glue blobs. Those are the 4 biggies we look for right up front. You find those, you're instantly in trouble. Okay. So,
to glue this on the little thing?
yes, sir. On the back of the little transom window piece, I'll take those, and what I'll do here, in fact, I'll show you what I'm doing. I'll get a little bit of glue here on the bottom of my shot glass, and then I'm going to take my head pin here. I'm going to get just a little bit, and I mean, when I say just a little bit, I mean that's a teeny tiny little blob of glue there. And I'm going to come across and I kind of scrape it off of it onto the wood surface on either end, and I'll put just a little bit in the middle. You don't need to go and glue the whole side down because it's not under stress. This thing's not carrying a load. Good Lord willing, you're never going to touch this, so you shouldn't have a problem with just a little bit of glue.
It's just got to stick.
Yep, just enough to hold it in place. Every bit of glue you put on there is a chance for squeeze out and a problem to be cleaned up later. So if you don't need it, don't do it. Now, I've got it on here. I've got a little heavy in this one spot, so I take my head pin and I kind of scrape it down the length of it a bit just to help spread that out some and get just a little bit of glue. Now, I'm going to lay glue surface up. I'm going to lay this down on my tabletop.
Hey, Duane, move your station.
Where you need me, left, right?
There you go. Perfect.
No, you need that moved. Gotcha.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to move this up here onto the green where I can see it.
Okay.
And I'll try to work on this as much as I can. Now I'm going to take my window glass piece and I'm going to take my other pair of tweezers. I'm going to line it up on one end. I'm usually doing this under much better lighting.
I was going to wonder where
And yeah, it was raining this morning. I was in a hurry. And I'll lay those in place. I also usually do this under a magnifier too. So either my optivisor or the big loop with a light. And I kind of line that up. Once I've got it lined up, I take the back side. Now these negative tweezers I like to work in, notice they have a hook on them, right? So what I'll do is I'll turn those to where that hook is kind of flat to the surface, and then I use that to kind of walk along the edge and press that lightly down into that glue. And then I'll set that aside to dry and just kind of push it over here out of the way. And we'll let that set up. Now, we're going to take this little piece right here and we're going to glue it to that guy. So same kind of principle here. I'm going to hold this and we're going to put a little glue on it. You can get a little heavier on the glue down here on the bottom because we've got a nice wide base to go on. And put a little glue on the top and along the sides. I'm not going to go down and put glue along every little inch of this. There just isn't a need for it, guys. Just enough to hold everything in place. That's all it takes. It's like Bro cream, little dab will do you. The older than I look. Now, I take my fingers and my finger and my thumb and I run it along each edge. And I'm going to run it along up here. And basically what I'm doing is I'm making sure I don't have any glue out over the edge. And I help them kind of spread that glue out just a little bit. Cuts down on some of the squeeze out. Now I'm going to turn it over. Now notice the bottom of the door is really wide. Let's see if I can get turned here. See how that's wider than the rest of it? That's the bottom of the door. If you look at the door backer, you'll look at the engraving on it, you'll see it also has a wide spot. Those two line up. Okay? So when you line this up, those clear spots on the door is exactly where all that trim's going to go. And when you get done, what it looks like is individual card siding behind the trim.
Yeah, can you see what you must have?
Sir?
On the transoms, I have 4 transoms and I only have 2 clear plastic.
Right. Right. Well, you don't. Okay, stop and think about it like this: window, glass, window.
Oh, okay.
We don't have to do that because we're not putting an interior in these. You only need
Okay.
one for each door.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, that's just a leftover that I forgot to trim out of there when I was cutting parts for you guys. And when you get these two glued together, I go back in, kind of press it all in place with my thumbs. Then I'll run my finger along the edge and make sure all the glues, there wasn't any squeeze out in there. And then I'm going to get in here, and typically I'll even do this with an Optivisor, but I'm going to go in and look through, and I'm looking at all these little joints wherever I put glue, and I want to make sure I don't have any squeeze out onto the main door. If you do, let it dry. You can come back in later with some of these negative tweezers if you've got those, and kind of peel it back out, or you can come back in with a knife and cut it back out, one or the other. It comes off really easy. If you use carpenter's glue, wipe it now while it's wet. If you let that dry, you may never get it off again without breaking the door. It's one of the reasons why I like working with this stuff. It's very forgiving. I'm going to do a quick test fit in my wall, make sure everything's nice and tidy. And I've cut enough of these things over the years that I'm pretty confident that my measurements and everything work, but always pays to double check. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to take one of these little transom windows, and you're going to glue this in first. So it's going to go in the wall up here toward the top, and we're going to glue that in, and then we're going to glue the door in right on top of it like this. Make sense? Now typically to do that, if you haven't glued your building together into a rectangle, I'll do that while it's face down here on the work surface. Okay? So I'll show you here. I'll actually glue mine in. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wall, and I'm going to take a little bit of glue, and I'm going to come along the top of this door frame, and I'm going to put a little bit of glue. Now notice I'm on the back side or the inside of the door, and I'm working where I'm scraping the glue or the head pin with the glue on it from the inside and scraping it back and letting that roll onto the top of that door opening, okay? Instead of working on it from the outside, which then puts the glue on the outside, I'm working from the inside. And what that will do is that's going to load the glue up toward the back side of the joint. So if there is any squeeze out, it'll go toward the back and not outside where you're going to see it. Okay? So I want to make sure I don't have too much on here, and I think I do just a little bit. So I'm going to come in and do just a little bit of maneuvering to spread that out just a little further. Now I'm going to lay it good and flat on my work surface. I'm going to make sure my window is facing down. I'm going to put it into the opening shy of where it's going to go, and then I'm going to move the thing in place, sliding it up. You got to be real careful when you're sliding it. It's a pretty tight fit, and you can get it kind of locked in place there on an angle if you're not real careful. All right, once I've got it up into the glue, I'm going to go back in. I scrape off whatever might be setting out on this outer edge just to clean up. I'm going to turn this back over and make sure I'm not proud of my opening any. Which, sorry, that's a woodworking term, means it's sticking out past the edge, for those of you who don't know. Now I'm going to put the door in. So what I'm going to do with the door is I'm going to put the glue along the sides of the door. I'm not going to worry about the top of it, because again, I don't want to worry about any squeeze out along the windows there. And I'm maybe putting a little more glue on here than I really need, but it's always good to...
So you're gluing the frame and the door?
Yep, I've already glued the frame to the door. So now I'm...
What did you glue to the door? Oh, yeah. No. I mean, on the top of you put some glue on the opening of the building.
Yes, and I put the transom in place.
Oh, okay. So my transom is still attached.
Yep, so you can do it all at the same time.
I got it.
All right, so I got my door ready to glue in. I'm going to come back in again. I'm going to come in just shy of the opening and then push it up into place. And what you're going to find is if you have it where it's flush, there will be the very slightest of lips from the back of if you run your finger across here, you'll feel a very slight lip from where the wall and the door meet. The door will be just a little shy of the wall. That's because the wall is a 1/16 of an inch, the door backer is a 32nd, and then there's a 64th piece of trim on it. So you're a little bit, shy of that. Now, You're a 64th shy. Now what you can do, and what I would recommend you do, is use a piece of strip wood of some sort and hold it across that joint, and then from the back, and then push that door back so that it's flush with the inside of the wall. And what that will do is create just the slightest bit of relief so your door looks like it's set in. Remember guys, these doors, you know how all the big rage now, thank you Chip and Joanna Gaines, is all the sliding barn doors? Well, these work on the same principle. They slide open. So they're actually behind the opening and they slide open into the building. So this door, if you look in this particular the picture up here, the way this door would work on the prototype is this door would slide that way into the open. That's why I always get weirded out when I start seeing kits with these big sliding freight doors and there's no room or nowhere for that door to open to. At that point I have to cut the door in half and make two smaller doors out of it so that they hinge open because there's no room for it to slide. You bet.
Don't put it in the contents room.
That's right. That's why I got into IT. It's right or it's wrong. It's a 1 or it's a 0. It's on or it's off.
You want to be flush on the inside.
I prefer to be. It does not make any difference in the world, but I prefer to be. Just for the relief, if nothing else. Now, we're going to add some trim to it right now, and I realize I'm moving really quick, guys. I get it. So if you've got any questions, please let me know. We're recording all this. It'll be up on YouTube here shortly, so you guys will be able to go back and rewatch it or whatever. Yes, sir. Question? All right. So now I have my freight door trim we're going to do next. On the door trim, what you're going to have is a piece here that's kind of U-shaped, and there's some verticals on the inside of those. Now, I believe this is another leftover from doing interior work. There's twice as many of these as you need too, so if you break one, you've got an opportunity to fix it. It's extra parts. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to go along here and I'm going to use my thumbnail and I'm going to pop these parts out. If the U-shape comes apart, don't let that bother you. We can always put it back together again. There is a slight possibility that it could because these are some pretty delicate parts, especially in the smaller scales. I tend to, a lot of times after I've painted them, I like to, when I'm cutting parts out, I like to reference the back because I can still see all my lines a little easier. Let's see here. This one's going to go along this way. And I can cut that free, which means I can cut this free. Now, little bitty pieces like this is just a cutoff. I mean, if this was a plastic part, this would be a sprue, okay? Typically, we throw these into a pile on our workbench, and eventually, they get thrown away. And my congratulations to David Grind, you're talking like a golfer. Or an N-scaler.
Yeah. Oh, no.
The reason they chose the name golf, all the other 4-letter words were taken.
That's right.
Freight door trim, that's where we're at, Duane?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you said something about it was it drive, chip, and putt? I was like, evidently you have not played golf with the same guys I play golf with.
Sand wedge,
Yeah.
foot wedge.
No, it's more like eraser, shank, and cuss. All right, now what I have here now is this, the white background behind it so you can actually see it, is this U-shaped piece, and notice it sticks out past the edges just a little bit. That's going to be the top of it, and we're going to glue that in place right here over the door and around it.
Now you got a door frame.
Now you have a door frame. There's also, inside of the legs of that, a couple of pieces that you can pop out. And I'll show you what we're going to do with those. It's mixed into 2 smaller boards. And we're going to add those across the top in 2 places. One's going to create a little bit of extra relief, and one's going to create a kind of a vertical lip. So let's glue this guy in place real quick. Get this done here before my glue dries. Wipe some of that off. Let's get a little load of glue here.
This is why working in wood is so good, guys, because you can do this kind of relief stuff that you can't do. You can do it in plastic, but it's a whole lot easier to do it in wood.
Yeah. All right, now I'm holding this again, negative tweezers. I cannot preach to you guys how handy these things are. I love them. I use them. Everything I build has had some sort of negative tweezer hitting it at one time or another. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in, I'm putting a very light pass of glue along here. And then I'm going to put a little bit across the top. I'm holding this part with my negative tweezers right in the center of that upper piece, just to keep from touching it and having to maneuver around it. Now you're probably going to end up like this one does. I've got a little bit of glue sticking up here, and I'm going to wipe that back. And again, like we talked about last month, I'm going to take my thumb and my forefinger here, and I'm going to come around either side of this, and I'm going to just very lightly run them across the edge, and then whatever squeeze out I get off of that, I'll wipe away. And that just limits then the amount of glue that's on here and can limit some of your squeeze out issues later. So we're going to come up here, I'm going to line this up on either side, I'm going to hold it in place with my thumb on one, slide the negative tweezer out, and start pushing this in place. And the first thing I notice is I made a boo-boo. So I'm going to come back in with my head pin. I'm going to take the extra glue off of it. I'm going to come back in here and clean some of my squeeze up off. So I'm going to turn this around so you guys can see how I'm doing it. I'm just coming along here and taking that out. Now this is a pretty significant piece of squeeze out. And it's right by the glass too, so. And I'll get this off the top. All right, there we are. Now the 2 little pieces are identical. There's 2 little, just almost like 2 little pieces of strip wood tucked in there. Don't think one's any wider than the other one, so it doesn't make any difference what order you do this in. Holding it again with a pair of negative tweezers, I get a little bit of glue on here. I want to add a little bit of glue on the back side in a couple, 3 places. Now the end scale, guys, I would recommend not doing this. Again, not a slag on end scale. It's just it's so flaming small. I don't know if it'd ever be seen if you do it. So it's an awful lot of extra work for something you may not really get a benefit of any visibility of it. Now where this goes is right across that top piece. On top of the top. So you're just creating a second layer up there. Yep. Yes, sir. So that's going to create a little further relief. Push that in place. Make sure any squeeze out's cleaned up. Now, this other one, if you want to, completely optional, is it can actually go in on top of it. If you look up here on the screen, it can go in parallel to the floor. So what it'll end up doing then is creating a bit of an overhang on the trim. If you want to, it's an optional piece. So you're actually going to glue this in so it would be parallel to the floor.
What about between the transom and the door?
You glue that? You want a piece of trim there?
Well, there's a relief.
Alrighty. All right, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to get your doors caught up, and then we'll move on. How are we looking time-wise?
11:30.
Oh, cool.
So
Did you give us extra of the, I forget what they're called, go under the eaves?
The eave brackets?
Did you give us extra?
There are probably, yes, there are probably a few extras.
Pop one out and just disintegrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was worried about that. I put in a bunch of those eave brackets and stuff because I really wasn't sure how many everybody would want.
All right.
And since this isn't an actual prototype,
I want one.
you know, I made 4 for each end. So the ends of them will have 4 each. But along the sides, it's kind of a wherever you can get them to go, because like here, I've got one on either side of the man door, which basically puts one on either side of the bay window, one over this end of the freight door, but I couldn't see putting another one over here somewhere because there was one out here on the end that's gotten broken off.
Right.
And it's kind of the same way on the other side. I just kind of stuck them in there. They're not symmetrical. There's not one every so many feet spaced across there just because the door's in the way or whatever. So
They would have been on the raft. They would have been on the raft ends.
not necessarily. A lot of those would go in. You would have your rafters come out. The tails would come out. They'd have a board across the bottom of that, and then those are nailed up. Usually on the bottom of, you'd have a rafter. You'd have a board. They'd have them supporting on the end of the rafter and then supported up against the wall.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's kind of one of those. If you want to go back in,
So do we need to put rafter ends on?
no. Basically, because the thickness of your roof is going to account for that whole thing, and you can come back in and put trim on there if you want to. But there's no real need to put rafter tails on it.
Duane, do I have extra trim that goes around these spray doors? Looks like I've got 4.
Yes, you do.
I have extra.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, that was kind of a holdover from the way I had the kit originally designed and how I'll be selling it going forward, because it'll have the interior pieces.
Sure.
Oh, and gents, I've got more of these little parch trays. If you guys want some, please come up and grab a handful. Whatever doesn't go home today goes in the trash, so be greedy. There's plenty of them. And I'll have stacks like that every couple of months, so. Yeah, I agree.
And then he's looked at these surface cars.
That makes sense.
That as well, so that gets his guys to here's his 4 service. Senior gets the cars and electric. So
Cool.
Frame around. Right, yeah, and the transformer above. Yeah, was that door back? And the framework that goes around.
I'm doing too bad. Now, what you're probably going to have when you get this all glued in place, it's kind of like the inside openings we talked about. Look around each angle of it and make sure that you're on the trim color with everything. You don't have any, like mine, I've got trim color of a dark green and I've got a depot buff for the walls. So look around in all these joints and make sure you don't see depot buff in there anywhere. And I've actually got some of it showing, so I have to come back in afterwards and touch that up with a very fine brush, because I didn't paint the insides of my openings yet either.
I'm looking at the window on this mock-up over here. The window on this end, the inside. Look at the inside window right
Yes,
there.
I know.
Is it on purpose?
Yes. This is the one I built for the article. So I built in several mistakes on this. And trust me, it makes me cringe. Dad's like, well, I'll just go ahead and put it on the layout. I'll be back far enough, nobody's ever going to see it. And I'll go, I'll know it's there. You'll get a different one.
Yeah. And that was one of those things you sent me the picture and said, where are the problems?
Yeah.
This is what I found.
Yep.
The ones I found. Yeah.
Yep. All right, I'm going to start moving forward. We're going to build a man door. The man doors go together just like the freight door. There's a backer, there's a window above it, there's a frame that goes around it. So I'm going to come in here and pop this loose. And we're going to take the whole thing out. Now, above or below, depending on how you're holding the cut sheet here, you're going to see a box that looks like it's a piece of trim. Again, that's a holdover for the interior. You don't necessarily need it.
So what carrier sheet are we pulling this frame from the man door office?
The one that says exterior doors?
Exterior doors.
Yep. Sorry, I was working off the back. I had to flip it over to see what I had titled it. Yeah, but if they take pictures of your club layout and that's not there, that's the first thing that's going to show up is you don't have grabs and you don't have brake wheels.
Yeah.
Whether they're going to handle it or not, it needs to be there. This means you got to worry about your construction. And whether or not it's going to stay on there when you do grab it. All right. Now, also on that same sheet, you're going to see a piece that looks like that. This is another layer to the top of the door frame, just like we did a second ago with that secondary board. This one's going to get glued to the top of the door frame to offer some 3D relief. Okay? So, yep. So what I have here is I have one of these rectangles that's the door back. It's painted the same color as my wall. I'm going to come in here and we're going to glue this on top of it so that it's going to look like that. And you'll note above it there's a window. We have a small piece of window glass we're going to glue on there, and I actually glue that on first. Okay? So back to our window glass piece.
Does it make a difference which way the doors turn?
Nope.
So which is the door? Which is the door?
The backer should be a rectangle, about like that. It was in the same bag with your freight door. You missing them?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This?
Are they ribbed or anything?
Nope. Nope, it's just a plain rectangle. Because we're going to glue the frame over it, and it's just going to look like a flat panel door.
Keep in mind, part of the scrap is also rectangle. You want the shorter of the two.
Yeah, you're looking for a rectangle of 32nd inch plywood that's about an inch tall and about, let's see, it was hard to read this one.
3/8.
Yeah, about 3/8 wide, right at it. And there should be two of them matching. One side of each gets painted the same color as your wall.
Is there like 4 of them?
Should be 2 of them. Should be 2 of those and then 2 of the freight doors, and they were in the same baggie.
Good to have friends, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I got more. I don't know. Yeah. I got more than that.
Do what?
Yes,
Yes, sir. If you're looking at if you're looking at the window glass piece I gave you, out on one end there's 2 round windows. Right underneath that are 2. They're rectangles, but they're almost square. That's the piece you want for this. There's a small gate on each one of these. You're just going to cut that free, and then we're going to glue it in place after we buff the finger marks off of it. Okay.
We're only using the bottom of this, right? I'm not taking the top.
Okay, I've got it buffed. Pulling it off. I'm gonna double check it. I'm glad I did. I still have a spot on here. That'll work.
For you, it's, and for me, it's like.
And one thing you're going to note as you're working with the Aleenes is as it's been out for a bit, it starts to thicken up as it starts to set up. This is kind of handy in a way because it does help you do a kind of a controlled add in places. It does mean you need to work a little faster though, because your glue's about to go bad on you. So I'm coming in, I'm adding a little bit of glue to the whole surface, not all the inside frame pieces, just around the outer perimeter. Put my door on.
Bag got a spare microphone. Big paintbrush.
And lay my glass in. And no squeeze out. Yay.
Gerald says hey.
Tell him I'll get to cutting on his next week. Got test fit. Everything looks good. It's one real nice advantage to working with a laser kit is everything's, you know, sized down to 1,000, so your fits should be really good. But I have seen laser kits where they don't, so you just kind of have to be careful and double check things. Not going to name names, but some are better than others.
Talking bar mills?
No, bar mills is good stuff. I've never had a problem with a bar mills kit yet.
No, one's coming to yellow box or
No, I never really had any problem with Foss scale
I've
either.
had a couple of
No, the one that always gives me fits is Banta. I like his kits, don't get me wrong, but there's something about the way he describes it going together, I guess, that I'm not getting.
Who's that?
The Banta. I've got several of his kits. I like them because he tends to do a lot of the stuff that's prototypically for my area, doing Southwest Colorado and doing narrow gauge. But I've had to go through and redo a couple of things because it didn't go together to me the way I thought it was supposed to. And again, that may be a short between the work surface and the seat. I don't know. I like that one, did you?
Duane, the rectangle.
Yes, sir.
That's underneath the door on the exterior door exterior sheet.
Yes.
Is that part of the front of the door, or
Talk about just the spare rectangle?
just the spare empty rectangle?
No, that small little spare rectangle is actually the inside window frame. So it doesn't have to be put on. See, there I was busy talking and I put glue around the wrong opening.
Blame me.
Again, short between the glue applicator and the seat.
You get it?
You know why it's called O-scale,
I'm
right?
feeling pain for David over there.
That's that. Oh, I can see it.
Well, that's G-scale. Now you making this even with the outside of the wall?
Which one? The door, the man door? You can. Strictly up to you. It's kind of like doing the freight door. If you want it flush, you can. If you want to have it step back just a little bit, you can get away with that. Just give you a little bit extra relief.
G-scale, sir.
Ready?
Randy,
I ended up with squeeze out.
are those?
Yeah,
Glass.
this is true.
It goes for about 4 months.
I'd really be pissed if I wasn't going back and cleaning it up, too.
They're such an interesting shape.
Skylight.
No.
I don't know if you can use
Mainly 'cause I've never built anything that needed
Let
it.
me know if you want a number and,
Yeah.
Just curious, like one of those mines or something like that. You know. Get window skylight kind of thing.
None of them have anything like that. Yeah. Typically, a skylight would go on more of a residential,
Yeah.
not necessarily modern. You'd see skylights going back, you know, into some of the deco buildings and stuff. You know, the old brownstones and things like that. A lot of the upper ones would have skylights in them.
We, you know, on a,
So now I've got my man door in place.
Syringes, they make beautiful roof decks, all different sizes.
I'm going to come back in now and add my trim. Same way as before. I'm going to hold it with a pair of negative tweezers from the center and the top. And I'm going to add a little bit of glue along the back side.
Chris, is Kathy building this kit?
No.
Okay.
That's going to be where it's going to contact. I was going to bring, so the top, you just put the window in there, is that what it is? That's good to make.
Same kind of thing. I'm going to use my fingers to kind of make sure I don't have a whole lot of glue in any one particular space. Come back in. Lay it in place. So while I've got it there, I'm going to add that little extra piece to it. Former music to my ears.
What YouTube channel is this on?
What's the YouTube channel?
Division 1. So Cowcatcher Division.
Cowcatcher Division 1.
Okay, who here has New York plates on their car?
We got a Yankee in our midst?
Probably Joe
Two.
Lacey.
I was just curious, let's say hello.
Maybe Joe Lacey. He's from Buffalo. Joe Lacey. Sitting at the end of that road.
With the beard?
So there's one of each of the doors in place.
If you were putting in the interior of this, would you put a wall over the bracing on the inside of the bracing over there?
Typically, if I'm doing one, I'm exceedingly careful in what I'm doing, and I don't put a lot of bracing in it. Partially because it's really hard to hide like that. If you end up putting an interior wall and you've got bracing on the inside of it, now your wall to scale is about this thick, and that's a problem. Like this one here, I actually built this one for my article, and it sits on a piece of flooring that's not in the box for some reason. Oh, here it is. So, make sure I got this turned the right way. So what's going to end up happening with something like this is it would just get glued straight down. Now you'll notice there's no bracing in there. The only thing I've got in there to brace it are the interior walls themselves. And that's really what I use the interior walls for, is just to help support that wall from bowing in or out. If I've got a real significant warp in it, one of two things happens. I either have to recut the wall and come up with something that will work for, because anything I build like this is I'm thinking contest room. And when I'm going up against, you know, the Chuck Linds and the Lauren Neufelds and the Al Boozes and the Gil Freitags and the Jeff Palmers, I don't worry about Mackey, but the rest of them, you know, those guys, I'm worried about it. You know, just every last little detail needs to be right. So I try not to put anything in there that really wouldn't be in their prototypical. So that 1/16 of an inch thick, you're already pushing a 2x4 stud wall, you know. So you've got to be pretty careful. That's another reason why I preach dry brush your color on. If you've got to paint the wall 3 or 4 times to get a color level you're happy with, then do it, but don't put any more liquid onto that wall that you don't have to, just to prevent it from warping out. All right, same procedure for cleaning off your glass. I'm going to put them in my rag here, and I'm going to clean all the fingerprints off of it. Make sure there aren't any fingerprints on it. That looks good. Now, what you have in your window sheets are a lot of these window frames, okay? These windows are meant to be double hung, meaning they open. So you're going to turn this, you notice one of them has mullions on one end, one doesn't. So in this case, if this were hanging up in the window, this piece up here with the mullions goes in the top, this piece with the opening goes in the bottom. All right, make sense? So what's going to happen is you're going to glue this piece to the glass, then we're going to come in and glue this piece in it like this. And if you want to have your window open, then you can have it popped up here in the back and have the window open some if you want to. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first piece and I'm going to put some glue on it. And we're going to get the glass mounted. I modeled southwestern Colorado. It is seldom window open weather up there. At least this time of year. It's still a little chilly up there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed they got hit with the albino brain chiggers. My nephew just moved up to Longmont? Up northwest of Denver at any rate, one of the suburbs.
My buddy's up outside of Durango.
And he left you here, that's no friend.
Well, he got a job with Soundtrack, so guess what?
Oh, there you go.
That's a good contact to have.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I've given George grief for years up there for not taking me with him.
George was, I used to work at a hobby hub part-time, and George was a 14-year-old kid that used to hang out there. And then he started coming over to my house after his mother figured I wasn't a child molester.
Hid that one, did you?
Yeah. George basically grew up at my house.
Yeah. Not a bad thing. You turned out all right, so you must have done good.
He wants to come back this way if he can find a job. The Soundtracks are not necessarily.
Alrighty. I have my glass in my window frame. So I'm going to lay that flat. I'm going to come back in, put a little bit of glue on this one. And I'm going to make this one closed, so I imagine that's how most of y'all are probably going to do y'all's.
You put a glass on both of those frames?
No, sir, just one.
Just between the two?
Yep, just put one between the two. And you're going to have some extra window glass, I believe.
Or at least that's the idea.
Yeah, you take the two window frames and sandwich them.
Yep.
How much to get another one of these kids?
Do what?
How much to get another one of these?
I'm for Division I guys, or I'm selling them to the division for 50, and the division was covering some of it. So if you want another one, it's 50. They're going to sell for a little more than that online, but if you want the interior, it'll be a little higher. If you want another one exactly like this one, it's $50. If you want the interior, it's a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, it's got walls. And,
basically, what you're going to have is it'll have all the interior walls, an extra set of doors, all the windows will have framing for inside and out. You'll also get the floor will actually be engraved for hardwood on the passenger side in the office area, and then it's got a wide plank floor for the freight area. I'll have to go back and look and see what it looked like with the discount. Probably around 65 or 70, something like that, because it's a lot of extra machine time.
can you just get the interior, or is that too late?
You could, I mean, if you wanted to put an interior in this one, you could. It'd be a lot of extra work because the floor's not engraved. So we'd have to cut you a floor piece, and you'd have to lay that in there, and it'd be quite a bit of extra work. All right, so what I have now is that sandwich put together. And what you want to make sure of is that the piece that was open at the bottom faces out. That way the piece you glued on in the back, I mean, stop thinking how a window works, right? You've got the upper frames in place, the inner frame slides up behind it, right? So this outer one needs to be open at the bottom. So when you hold your window sandwich up, if you're not sure which way was which, take your finger and run it up this piece of glass here. And if you're open at the bottom and you're hitting a little lip right there, you've got it oriented where this is the top. Okay? Now putting it in, just like anything else we were doing before, I usually tend to mount them from the back. And these, I typically try to get flush. If you don't get your window glass in there just right, they can be a little tricky to try to get them to fit. So always test fit. And if you've painted your window openings, if you got a lot of paint in there, it may not want to fit real good. I just had to press that one in place just a skosh, but I want to make sure that once I drive this all the way down against my mat, that I don't have it wrinkled in there, okay? That's something that can happen is that you'll end up with a bit of a wrinkle, and this glass is pretty thin. So it will warp just like the rest of the window opening will, and then you end up with a very non-prototypical looking piece of window in there. But nope, this one fit really nicely actually. So I'm going to pop it back out, and I'm going to put just a little bit of glue in there, and we'll get that mounted. Now again, you're right here next to the glass, so you want to make sure you don't have just a ton of glue in there, or you're going to end up with some squeeze out, and you could end up with it on your window glass, and that's always a problem.
Okay, so one stands vertically.
Yeah, one's vertical, this is horizontal.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Okay, stand ready. Here's a red.
Yeah. Well, what's my plan?
All right. And then
There we go.
He's got 1 to 4 on his schedule.
All right, so there we are with the window added. Trim is the exact same process. You've got a piece that goes up and over. There's a laminate to go across the top of the upper piece, so you get the 3D relief. There's also a window sill you can add in here if you want. Again, in scalers, wouldn't worry about the window sill.
You're going to Keller, right?
Say, Duane, the question is, if you wanted to have an open window,
Yep.
how would you go about doing that?
Okay. If you want to do an open window, you're going to take one and you're going to offset it. So the back of the two is going to be offset so that the mullion piece slides up a little bit. You're going to glue that in place, and then anything that sticks up above the window, you're going to cut it off.
Cut it off?
Yep.
Same thing with the glass?
No. Yes. Sorry. Woo. Yeah. Correct. No, we're going to have glass on it anyway. Yeah. One thing I will tell you about popping these pieces out of the carrier sheet is look at the grain. Just like anything else, cuts along the grain will come out really nice. It's the ones that go against the grain, even though this is plywood, it's the against the grain ones that tend to want to stick. That's why I like to orient the parts as much as I can so the longer axis of the part runs with the grain, so the parts will pop out a little easier. Again, something that tends to be a problem. Other manufacturers tend to want to try to cram everything in there so that it's more cost effective material wise for them, but it leaves you in a bit of a lurch trying to get the parts out. To counteract that, a lot of what they do is they cut the part completely out except for in one or two little places, and they leave you a gate to try to cut out. And the problem with that is you're dealing with very delicate small parts, and when you go to cut the gate, you usually end up breaking the part. I don't do gates. I've got the power settings set so they'll come out with very light pressure, and you shouldn't have to worry about it. Keyword there is shouldn't. Okay, so now I'm going to put some window trim on this. A little bit across the top. A little bit down the sides. It doesn't take just a whole lot of glue, but surprisingly, while you're building these things, a building does get a lot of handling, especially when you're going back in later and you're weathering it and stuff. So you don't want to put so little glue on there that it won't hold up to being worked on. But you also don't want to load it down so that you're dealing with cleaning up squeeze out everywhere either. And it's kind of it depends on your skill set and how long you've been doing it. It's all about the experience, and it's the more you do it, the better at it you'll get. Because you'll get an idea of how to handle your buildings when you're going back in and doing final weathering and things, so that you don't touch it in certain places where things are going to be delicate and things like that. When you first get started, you tend to just reach in and grab it and start your weathering process, and you can end up breaking things and having to go back and fix. And
Sounds like you're speaking from experience.
yeah, that's definitely one of those ask me how I know this moments. A lot of model railroading is common sense, and I do realize common sense has become so rare it needs to be classified as superpower, but there's just an awful lot of it. You sit there and you stop and think, okay, that just took me 15 minutes to put that together, and that is really fragile. Your brain should go, don't touch it. But unfortunately, we'll end up grabbing it at exactly the wrong place. Now, the window has an up and an over. It also has an underneath. And it's really hard, even in HO, to tell which one's which. But I can tell you, and you probably won't be able to zoom in close enough to see this on the screen, but one of those teeny tiny little pieces has a bevel on either edge like this. That goes on the wall. The other piece goes across, down, back in, back down, and across. That's your windowsill. Okay. Wish I had a whiteboard. All right, so you've got a board that runs across, down, here, down, and back. That one is the windowsill. The other one with the angles going out in either direction, that's the bottom trim piece.
This little guy right here.
Yeah, there's two little itty bitty guys right there alongside inside that window frame.
Okay. Right next to
Yep, and they're right next to each other.
Let's cut them good, because that's the one when this thing fell that they popped it up.
Exterior window.
Is it like flat or is it all in?
It go. Well, they both go. Well, okay. The one with the angles goes flat. The one that's the window sill is going to go on end, because it's actually going to go into the window opening, which is why you want to have that window be recessed just a little bit.
That's on the exterior windows trim?
Yep.
Versus the other one that's not. The one with the double with the sill.
Other way around, Joe.
Oh, sorry, other way around.
The one with the bevel is the trim. The one with the little 90-degree cutout in either corner is the windowsill.
Okay. The whole piece goes at the bottom.
Now, admittedly, in the smaller scales, you may not necessarily need to put the windowsill itself in place. It's real hard to see. It's hard to mount. If your building has any distance on it at all off the edge of the layout, you'll probably never see this part again. I will, however, tell you, if you're going to put this in the contest room, put the windowsill on. Because some smart aleck judge is going to look at that and go, huh, no sill on the window. There's points off. It doesn't match the prototype.
Whatever that would be.
Balding guy, long red hair, real putz.
Wearing a hat,
Hey,
red
big
hat
test
right
earlier.
now.
Hey, Duane, if
Yes,
we're
sir.
doing, this is the man doors.
Yes, sir?
We do a frame on both sides if we're doing the interior.
If you're doing the interior, yes, frame on both sides. And see, that's one where I've been talking no interiors. For what you're doing, all your window frames, all your door frames, up and overs, inside and out.
Yeah, so I put the top one up
Yep.
on there, and it was just a square. It wasn't
Yeah.
a
So you got right. So you put your window glass in it, and then put that in, put that one there, and then put your inner liner on it. So your door is painted on both sides.
Okay.
Did you ever write the instructions up on the flat car that we were making out of yardstick?
I didn't do a flat car out of yardstick.
Either you or your dad were over.
Dad probably did it years ago. Yeah, that was the original launch into the achievement program.
Over at the Arlen
Oh man, that was a long time ago. Yikes! I mean
Back when they had
I-
joysticks.
I mean we're talking 25 years ago maybe. Wow, yeah, I've forgotten about doing those out of yardsticks. I don't know if he ever wrote that up or not. We could,
I didn't finish it. I still have those 2 yards.
Give me a ring sometime and let's talk about it, because I could probably walk you through it. That's something else we ought to look at doing, is doing a make and take on scratch building a wooden flat car.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun one.
So I still
Window
have
sill
them.
goes vertical, right?
Yeah, so you
Joe
got
Lyson.
this one,
Right.
that one
Joe
goes flat
Lyson.
against the wall across the bottom,
January,
and then
make and take clinic on
and
a
then the
flat car.
windowsill goes, so this is your window, the windowsill goes in this way, right along that bottom edge. And that little recess that's created by those
January.
90-degree bump outs, that goes inside. That makes sense?
Goes inside or on outside of the.
This is whiteboard, right? Yeah. We got a white dry erase marker?
Yeah.
Should be
Here.
up on the.
Well,
Jay will get you one.
What you need? Dry erase marker?
here you go. You got one?
Cool, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so what you have underneath the window, there's a piece that looks like this. Okay? Then there's another piece in there that looks like that. That's your windowsill. That gets, so if this is your window, this gets mounted in this way, and this piece right here, this little bump out right here,
Goes inside.
that goes inside the window opening, so that this piece is sticking out, so that this is actually glued to the outer wall trim of the window.
So what about the piece on the left?
This one? Yeah. That gets glued underneath. So when you have your window opening trimmed out,
Okay, glued underneath the windowsill.
that one goes right down here,
No. That one.
like that,
Below the sill.
below here, and then this goes in this way, right here along that line.
Okay.
Okay, where is
Where
it?
is that one? Where is that upside down hat one? Is it supposed to go?
So this?
Yeah, no, above that.
This one? It's on the inside of the window frame. So you've got the up and over piece for the window frame? Yeah, it's on the inside of the window frame. That's what I was just talking about. It would be those two right there. One of that one's the frame, that one's the little angle piece. Yeah, trust me, it is. So when you're looking on the carrier sheet, inside it looks something like this. Yeah, they're very tiny. Yeah. So you'll see those three pieces inside there. In scale, I wouldn't worry about them. That is so small. You'll be lucky if they're not nothing but ash. So just put the up and over around it and call it good. If you want a little piece across the bottom, if one of those survived, then duck that one in there. But yeah, dude, don't kill yourself on the windowsill.
So this is the bottom piece goes below the window, right? That's the where you got this.
Yes.
Geez, I've got it so long ago. I don't.
I see this with the little one. So
Yep.
No, you get different
The Optivisors.
magnifications.
Randy, you're talking about Optivisors? I think Discount carries them. If they don't, you can get them a Micromark. Jane's Trains, her son's still running that. He has a different flavor of those that have several different magnifications, and you can put up to 2 lenses in it at a time and have to flip up out of the way. Right. And the best thing I can tell you if you're going to have an Optivisor like that one is get the add-on lights. What it does is it puts 3 LEDs across the top and across the bottom of the lens there. And it puts a 9-volt battery on the side, which puts a lot of extra weight on it, and it takes some getting used to. But it's a little slide switch, you can kick it on, and when you flip that thing down, you've got light right where you're working. Really, really handy.
The one at James Trains has got an LED light
Built
on
into
the visor.
it. Yep, I've got both, and I use them both.
Yeah.
So.
With the LED on the visor and the multiple lenses, it's a nice.
Yeah, I like the one that James sells a little bit better than the Optivisor. It's not as heavy, and it runs on a couple of smaller batteries, so I don't have that 9 volts sitting out there on the side of my head. Plus the dual magnification makes it nice. Now, Optivisor has one that you can actually get a jeweler's loupe. So if you don't mind closing one eye and giving it the Captain Jack Sparrow look, you know, and putting your stuff together pirate style, you can get one of those. And I've got a couple of friends of mine that have them, and they swear by it. I tried it. I sweared at it. So.
Dennis has one that she uses.
Yep.
$500, unfortunately.
Yikes! Yeah.
Prescription, yeah.
Yeah. Ouch. Oh, there's the reason. By the way, make friends with your dentist and ask them next time you're in there for a checkup. What do you do with your old burrs? And most of them will tell you they save them for one guy or another, and if you ask them real nice, they'll give you the old burrs that are too dull for them to use for drilling on teeth, or polishing or shaping or whatever. Now, they may be too dull for human teeth, but they are still very sharp for cutting through styrene and basswood and inattentive modeler's fingers. And if you ask them real nice, they will send you home with a very large baggie full. Ask me how I know this, because I just got some on Thursday. I broke my crown last week and had to have a temporary put on it till they can get me a new one made. And while they're in there shaping on it, she made the comment, "Oh, that burr's dull." I said, "What do you do with those?" She says, "What?" I said, "What do you do with those?"
How'd you do that again?
What did you do with those? I got the best man in my wedding. His dad's a dental surgeon, and we were coaching his son's, the younger son's, little league team. And I told him that I wanted to go out and shag, shag flies with the kids, teach them how to shag fly balls. So they're all cruising out to the outfield. And says, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Teach them how to shag flies." He goes, "What?" I said, "Teach them how to shag flies." He goes, "What?" I said, "Teach them how to shag flies." He goes, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, then he understood.
Yeah. They speak fluent mumble. But there's both doors and one window put in. Now, working on this little end window is the exact same process, fellas. And I'm not going to cover it today. This will be part of your homework. There's a round window with 4 mullions on the inside of that. There is a circle on the outside of it. And then there's this little eyebrow piece here on the side. You're going to glue the round glass to the back side. You're going to glue that into the opening. Then you're going to glue the circle that's still inside of this right here. It's going to be inside that one with the mullion piece. There's a circle there that's going to glue on the outside of the wall. And then that little eyebrow glues across the top half of it to create a little bit of a drip edge kind of thing. And if you look real careful, depending on what color you painted these pieces, there's actually an engraved line around that outer circle that will show you where that eyebrow goes.
Okay. So there's a circle on the outside of the circle?
Yes. The circle with the mullions is the window piece itself. On the outside of that is another circle that's actually the frame for the wall.
Okay.
And on that is engraved where that little eyebrow piece goes.
Ah, gotcha.
Okay?
Fill that in. There's just right up. Right there.
Any pictures?
No, but I emailed those to you.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
Okay. This is his list of what he's got.
Don't need that yet.
Well, I thought I'd give it to you anyway, so you don't want to go.
That's no, because then we're gonna have the same problem we had with John's, where it's gonna be one of those. Well, I gave you this and I gave you that. I'm like, no, give it to me all in one shot.
Okay.
And I don't need that one. So.
And then we've got to paint under the roof.
Yes. Then that's gonna be part of the homework.
This is there's where I signed on the back. You can sign it, fill in the rest.
Yep.
Do all you want for paperwork.
All right. Lastly, while you guys are working, and we're not going to work on this week. We don't have time with the tour and everything. I'm going to give you a brief rundown on what we're going to do about working on this bay window, because this is a bit tricky because all of these boards are 90-degree angles, and we need them all to go together so that they make a little bit of an angle. This is not an exact science. This isn't a, you will shim this to a perfect 32 1/3 degrees. No. What we're going to do is we're going to take this piece here, it's one of our sides, and we're going to sand an angle on the inside edge of it. So if you look at it, you have a side that has engraving on it and a side that doesn't. The side that doesn't is the inside. It doesn't have to be a perfect angle, just an angle. We're going to do that to both of the long edges, both this edge and this edge. We're going to bevel an angle in it so that it ends up shaped like this on both of them.
Would you say roughly a 45-degree angle?
You could. It's more like a 60.
A 60?
Yeah. Like I say, it's not exact. This is a get it close. Okay?
Main thing is you want a sharp edge on the outside.
Correct. That's the biggie. You want a nice, good, sharp edge on it. Now, what I would recommend you guys do is everybody go get them a nice coarse emery board to do this with. Okay? Because here's what you're going to want to do. You're going to set that emery board flat on the table, on a good flat surface, and we're going to take this, I'm going to hold it at an angle, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to scrub it.
Move your model.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would normally say scrub this in a circle, just so you'll get even pressure on it, but that's going to be really difficult and you may break it. So back and forth on this will work just fine. Just try to keep even pressure as much as you can. Again, this isn't homework. I'm just kind of describing some of what we're going to do next time. All right? But everybody get them a good coarse emery board.
That is homework.
And it's going to take some sanding because this plywood's a little stiffer than if you're just going through solid bass. And I don't know how close you can get with that or not, if we can get it close enough to pick it up. I've talked about this a couple of times before, about how sanding back and forth, you never keep even pressure and one will get sanded more than the other. It's really hard to tell it but you may come up here. It's sanded pretty good right up here. It's not sanded hardly any at all down here. It's still fairly square. And that's why back and forth is not really a good way to sand. What I really, if these weren't so fragile, I would actually come in here and try to scrub this in a circle, but that's just not going to happen. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go back in here and put a little pressure on just this back side. And see if I can't compensate for where I goofed. One of the luthiers I like to watch on YouTube made a comment here a while back, and I really like the sentiment of it. He said, the mark of a true craftsman is how well he recovers from his mistakes.
One of the best ratings in golf is sand saves.
Yep. Well, the thing a lot of people don't get is a lot of the pros
play to the sand.
You betcha. They're in the trap because they want to be. Yeah. It keeps the ball from rolling off the back or whatever, and they can do a controlled shot out of it.
Exactly.
Of course, they're also playing on nice, freshly raked, fluffy sand, as opposed to the asphalt parking lot in the munis that you and I play at. You know?
That's why I like disc golf. I can pick it up.
Okay.
The occasional mulligan's okay.
That's right. So, we're going to work on sanding these down next month and getting those ready to go in. Yeah. So, homework. Everybody ready? All 4 walls need to be glued together into a rectangle. It would probably be a good idea if you picked up a piece of strip wood of some sort and glued it from one ridge to the other. That'll be a bit of a support. It'll also give something to glue the roof to. Your 2 roof pieces.
Tie out on that support piece.
Mm-hmm.
Put it where it's.
Yes. Try to turn it so that you're diamond shaping it so that the angle meets the angle. It doesn't have to be a perfect match, but just get it close, just so that the point and the point match up.
You're talking about like trusses?
No, in this case we're putting just a ridge pole in.
Oh, just okay.
Now, what you're going to want to do is take your 2 roof pieces. You'll note that on the roof there are lines running across the long axis of the roof. That's the side we're going to glue the shingles to. Take a black magic marker, a Sharpie, Mark-a-Lot, whatever, and color that black. That will represent tar paper and also offer a shadow line if you have any spots where you can see down through your shingle and onto the board. All right? But it will also, if you try to paint it, you're going to cover up those reference lines I engraved on there for you. Now the bottom side, you're going to want to paint that so that you have your wall color on the bottom side of the overhang. So basically you're just going to have to set it up there, roughly figure out where your overhang is going to be. You don't have to paint the whole thing. You can if you want to. Paint it, color it, or actually I'd color it first, flip it over, paint it, then set that down and weight it down with a couple of paint bottles or something like that so that it dries out perfectly flat. I will cut shingles and bring those in next time. I'm going to cut them white if I can. That way you guys can color them. If you want a green roof, you can make it green. If you want a brown roof, you can make it brown. I'll have to see if I can get enough material to do that, but I should be able to. This was cut out of some craft paper material that looks like wooden shingles. If you guys want wood, drop me an email and let me know, and I'll cut yours in wood. Anyway, you can have wood shakes if you want to. Most of them will be cut, though, 3-tab asphalt. So just kind of like what you have on your house. And if you want to go real uber fancy, drop me a line and I can do you some scallops or some diamond shingles or something like that if you really want to get crazy with it. But I've got to lay it all out and cut it. I've got most of the artwork for most of this stuff already drawn. So if you do want something specific, please let me know as soon as you can.
So Duane, you're saying run a Sharpie down this edge here all the way through and not cover up?
No, color the whole flaming roof.
Whole roof.
The whole roof.
That whole side with the lines running side to side,
yeah.
Color that whole thing black.
Okay.
The whole roof. If you paint it, you're going to cover up the reference lines. The lines are there so when we start putting the shingles down, you can make sure your rows are staying straight.
Okay.
But a Sharpie won't cover.
But a Sharpie, you'll still be able to see them through it. And it's nice and easy to do. Okay, so let me backtrack and make sure we've got everything. We're going to have all 4 walls glued together. We're going to have a ridge pole across the top. We're going to have our roof painted underneath. We're going to have our other side colored black. All your windows need to be in place. All your doors need to be in place. All the trim needs to be around it. And one other thing. The floor. Engraved on your floor, this is brown. That's because I have an interior, so I stained mine brown. So Daryl, if you want to stain yours, go for it. The outer edge of it, though, where you guys see the lines where what's going to be the deck around the thing, need to be some sort of weathered color. They never painted those. That would cost money. These guys make Ebenezer Scrooge look like a spendthrift. Copper wire was invented by railroads, stretching pennies. If you don't have to paint it, they don't. Some railroads were worse than the others. So what I did with this was I took this outer edge and I just stained it with alcohol and India ink. Do not use leather dye and ink, or leather dye and alcohol. All black leather dye is actually very, very, very dark blue. And under lights like this will look purple. I mean little old lady blue hair purple. The only leather dye I know of that is actually black is USMC black. It has nothing to do with the Marine Corps, but that's a great way to remember it. Otherwise, black India ink and alcohol. Preferably, the higher the alcohol content, the better. Yes, I know you can get the, what is it, 70-30 or 80-20 or whatever for 75 cents. Spend the extra quarter and get the 90-10 or whatever it is with the red label at Walmart. Buy it in bigger bottles at Sam's or whatever, and mix yourself up 3 or 4 different bottles with different amounts of alcohol to ink ratio. I keep about 5 or 6 of them like this on my work desk, and then I have a storyboard that I created that would basically take a piece of strip wood, and I'll start off with like a teaspoon of India ink into an entire quart here of alcohol. Then I dip the board in it, let it dry, and I glue it to a storyboard, and I write on there, this is the 1 teaspoon to pint of alcohol. And then I do a teaspoon and a half, 2 teaspoons, and so on. Now, as you're working with this stuff, it will settle. So if you want a lighter touch, don't shake the bottle. Dip it into just the top of it, and you'll get a lighter gray. If you want a darker gray, you can go all the way to the bottom, scrape it around a little bit, and then come back up. You can get nice varied effects with 1 bottle of this stuff, but I would really recommend you mix up 2 or 3 different strengths of it. You can go everything from fairly lightly weathered to extremely rotten just with this particular effect alone. Now, the one thing I would encourage you guys to do, if you're going to do this contest quality stuff, I would actually go through, and I wouldn't do my floor this way. I would engrave this. I would take this piece that I've engraved here. I would mount the building to it. And then I would come back in and use these engraved lines around this outer edge as a reference, and I would do board on board across this so that it is true individual boards, because you're going to see wood grain running across this from board to board to board to board, which never would happen in real. Yes, sir?
I had thought about that earlier, but now is that going to interfere with the doors type?
Do you plan on having your doors be movable?
No, but I just wondered if it was going to stick up into the edge of the door.
It can a little bit. What I would actually do if you're going to do that is I would actually put that down first and then glue the building down and have it run up just up underneath the walls.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, one thing I would really very highly recommend, and this is me, my own personal opinion, so take this as far as you want to, because this and $6 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. There's 2 things in model railroading I think are massively overdone and that they're incorrect. I hate nail holes with a purple passion, because it's supposed to be the paint coming off of the head of a nail, and that head of the nail has oxidized. What you end up with when you scale that out is a 16-penny nail head that is now the size of a damn dinner plate, and it's too big. We also tend to put them on with a pounce wheel, which means somebody got up there with a straight edge and very carefully hammered that siding up precisely in line. And if you've ever done that, you will know there is no straight line on any house ever built. No corner is square, and that siding got nailed up wherever he happened to drive the nail. It's too uniform. If you have fresh, really nice paint, that head will not be exposed. You shouldn't see it anyway. I had a guy who used to love to argue this with me all the time, so I did a test. I stuck a 16 penny nail, which you would never use anything that big to put siding up. I stuck it in a 2x4 and painted over it, stuck another one in the other end unpainted, stepped off 87 feet. And I asked him, I said, where's the nail on the unpainted side? And he goes, there. I said, exactly. Now, where is it on this side? He goes, I don't know. I said, then I shouldn't see it from a foot away from your model. He quit coming to my clinics and heckling me after that. The other one I really, and guys, if it's a roughed up old building and it hasn't seen a coat of paint since Moses was a pup, then yes, you need to put those on there. But I would really recommend using a very, very sharp colored pencil instead of making a divot in your wall that is too big. You can get a really nice sharp colored pencil, come in there and drop that on. You can get it randomized that way and you get something that's more true to scale. Okay?
Here's a real life example. The screws on the fascia board on that back there on the trunk.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: you can't see them.
Yeah, because they're painted.
From right here,
yeah,
you can't see them over there, and that's about 80 feet.
Yeah, right at it. But a couple of things, if you're going to do the board on board, something that guys really tend to do, and one of the guys in my club's real bad about this, and I love to give him grief about it. They'll take, and some kits will even tell you to do this. Take all your strip wood, cut it all the length, put it into 2 or 3 different colors of dye. So you would use 1 teaspoon on one pile,
hey guys,
1.5 teaspoons on the other pile, and 2 teaspoons on the third pile. Then pull them out, let them dry, mix them all up, and then glue it down. And then my question is, what zebra died on your deck surface? Walk outside and look at the privacy fence around your backyard and tell me how many shades of gray do you see? Because all of those boards have been out in the weather the exact same amount of time. What you might see is a very nice dark uniform gray with one that's a little less gray, or one that looks brand new where you've had to replace a picket. Same goes on a deck like this. What you might see is 1 board or 2 around a building that either is brand new because it's just been replaced, or it's a lighter shade of gray because it was replaced a few months ago. What you won't see is half a dozen of them are really, really dark, and they're interspersed with some that are another shade of gray, that are interspersed with some that they didn't go through and put down a board every few feet around the building, let that weather for a couple of years, then come in and put a few more in, let that weather for a couple more years, and then come in and put the rest of it in. They put it all down at the same time. Don't fall into the zebra trap. Again, personal opinion. If you like that, do it. Because here's the one rule that supersedes everything I will ever tell you. Your railroad, your rules. What makes you happy, do it. Everybody got their homework?
Are we supposed to glue it to the floor? Or?
Go ahead and glue it to the floor. It's not 100% necessary that be done. You could do it dead last if you want to. But if you want to go ahead and glue it to the floor, go for it. I would almost recommend you don't for right now, because we're going to be gluing these roof braces on once we get the roof on. And if you're having to work up underneath the roof and up and over the floor, that could be a bit of a challenge. So I would really recommend that the last thing we do is put this on.